Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. It's a while since we've had a guest, isn't it? I need to give a bit of prod the rest of the family party team to see if we can get someone on next week to bring some issue to talk about. But as ever, there is lots in the news and lots been going on to talk about this evening. So I've got your comments ready to show. So do fire away with the comments, and I'll be able to interact with those a lot tonight. So where shall we start? Let's start. Let's start here. Why not? Why not? This is Calvin Robinson. Quite a few of you know Calvin Robinson's quite a public figure. He worked for GB News. He was like their resident Christian commentator on things. I thought he was good when I was at GB News. He left it when Dan Wooten made a sort of very unsavory remark about a woman. Anyway, so Calvin Robinson's got his own sort of career now. And from time to time, I've pointed out that there's been things that he puts on social media that are totally out of order. Now, people might say, well, why do you bother doing this? I just think it's quite important that people are discerning in who they follow and who they're listening to. And if you look at this post here, so there he is in his dog collar with some weapon there. He lives in America now, some sort of weapon. But then look at the caption: "Has the Holy Father called a new crusade yet?" Now, Calvin Robinson isn't a Catholic. I'm not quite sure how the denomination he's in works. So it's basically saying, has the Pope called a crusade? In other words, has the Pope instructed us to go and fight against, well, crusades? We primarily think against Muslims, do you think? So it's pretty sensationalist, inflammatory, irresponsible, not impressed. So the reason I'm saying that is, I really hope people are not being influenced by Calvin Robinson. It's a real shame because he was so good when he was on GB. From what I saw of him, I wasn't a great viewer, but from what I saw him on GB News, he seemed to be doing a really good job. And he speaks really clearly on a lot of important issues, but then sometimes he sort of loses the plot and does things like that. Let us move on. Right, Sheku Bayoh. Now, I made a short video about the inquiry, just going over the basics and saying what a lot of nonsense it was this week. I think it was the most views we've ever had for a video in the family party. I think it's got on Facebook. It got to about 112,000 views. So it went pretty viral there. But the issue just goes on and on. So what's happened now is that the judge in charge, Lord Brackadale, has stood down because he had a private meeting with Sheku Bayoh's family, which you obviously shouldn't do. So he's now stood down. So I wonder how much he's been paid over the 5 years. I mean, how much do you have to pay a High Court judge? Well over £100,000. Let's say £150,000. Been doing that for 5 years, £750,000. So the best part of £1 million this judge has been paid. And because he messed up, he's now stood down. And his team of lawyers, most of his team of lawyers around him have stood down as well. So the inquiry's got to more or less start from scratch again. They don't have to get the witnesses in again. It's all been video, but they've got to watch everything, read everything. It's like back to square one. I mean, I think he should be repaying this money. He was paid to produce this report at the end of the inquiry, and he hasn't done it. So he's taken 5 years of extremely high pay and produced nothing from it. So, I mean, the whole thing is a farce. John Swinney is having a special meeting with the Bayoh family now. I mean, just what is it? I guess the SNP, John Swinney is not thinking, I'm a sort of Black Lives Matter critical race theory proponent. I'm sure this must have been racism, so we need to get racism sorted out in Police Scotland. I don't think John Swinney's thinking that. I think all John Swinney ever thinks is, what's the best step here? What's going to cause least trouble? What's going to make people like me? What's going to avoid people disliking me? So I think he's just following that sort of line. But the whole thing is a farce. I mean, it's cost £50 million so far, this inquiry. I mean, now they're starting from scratch. Surely it's going to cost at least another 20 million to get this report that inevitably is going to say somewhere there's some racism somewhere, even though there's no evidence of it remotely in the way the police officers behaved. And I said in my little video I made on it today, an update, the only person who will be pleased when they say police, well, the family will be pleased. Was it Anwar, or whatever his name is, the lawyer? he'll be pleased if they say Police Scotland's racist. The other person who's been pleased will be the Chief Constable of Scotland, because she says Police Scotland is institutionally racist. So when this report finds somehow or other, by some vague, tenuous connection, it was something to do with racism, then she'll be delighted. She'll be delighted. Right, I've got some information here. Liam often chips in with information. £234,000 a year minimum for a High Court judge can rise to 266. Right, this is someone retired, so assume they're very much at the top of their game. And so actually, I've underestimated. So it'll be well over £1 million. This judge has been paid. Then he stands down because of his mistake and pays no price whatsoever. Okay, it's a bit embarrassing having an article in the newspaper. To be honest, I wouldn't mind having an embarrassing article in the newspaper for £1 million. But great work if you can get it. I mean, how's this going to end? I mean, this is going to rumble on. I mean, so surely we're looking at more than a year to go, a year or two to start from scratch with this whole thing. I mean, it needs binning, but we shall see how this all works out. I've been talking a bit recently about some of the incidents that go on with elected politicians in Scotland, and the string of scandals, dishonesty, inappropriate behaviour is unbelievable. So the latest instalment, ex-Tory council leader guilty of £188,000 romance fraud. So I think the story is basically he left his wife, went off with another woman. And this person was involved in a Christian radio station. I think it was, these details might be exactly right. I think it was the leader of the church choir in his church. So very much involved in Christian activities. Meanwhile, he's like conning his sort of new girlfriend, new partner through some sort of property deals. I mean, quite astounding how they get people. It's as though they, like the recruiting office for the Scottish Parliament or the councils is in prison. It's remarkable how they do it to get such people. Anyway, let's here's another one. So this Labour MSP, I think it was suggested what the accusations were going to be, but it seems like they've been formalized now. He's been accused of possessing indecent images and voyeurism. This is the man accused of putting a camera in the toilets in the Scottish Parliament, the MSP. Yeah, so that's in the police hands. Right, which party shall we go over to next? Alba. Financial irregularities in the Alba party. I mean, I guess if you split off from the SNP, quite a bit of SNP DNA goes with you. And maybe this is it blossoming into financial irregularities in Alba. I mean, Alba's a pretty small operation. I mean, how this manages to happen, I do not know. I mean, Alex Salmond, the late Alex Salmond, there were serious question marks about his character. He was leading Alba, and now there are serious question marks about the operation of the whole party. I mean, basically, Alba's done for. I mean, they're going to decline and decline unless they get some sort of incredible, inspirational leader joining them. But I can't really imagine that anything's going to turn it around for them. And I just think that they are on the way out. Scottish Family Party finances. We haven't got enough money to have financial irregularities, I think. Our accounts are so simple. Right, that was your councillor, Liam. Yeah, right. What an honour for you. The problem with local politics, I guess, a lot of people have voted for this fella thinking, oh yeah, I'll vote Conservative or Conservative second choice. Don't know who he is or whatever. And even now, when he's in total disgrace, most people who voted for him won't know what's happened. There won't be any accountability. They won't be thinking, oh, last time I voted for the Conservative Party. Or they'll just be completely oblivious. And I'm not criticizing the people because, I mean, that was me. That was me. I mean, local elections, I would go and vote, but I would just vote by party. I wouldn't bother to find out anything out about the candidates. I didn't really know anything about how the party acted within the council. I didn't know the local policies. I'd just vote for the party I liked based on national issues. And that's a problem, I think. We've got a lot of policies to try and address that, but I won't go into those at the moment. Now, this is John McEnany. He's a journalist at the Herald, and I came across him a few weeks ago because he wrote the most egregious hit piece about Charlie Kirk. He's the one who wrote it about that Charlie Kirk's influence will result in more violence against women and girls in schools, which is, yeah, I mean, what can you say about that? Totally divorced from reality. And he's their education correspondent. Now, you'll see a bit of connection building up there. I mean, and he's very much embedded in the Scottish educational establishment, maybe not formally, but in terms of the way he thinks, he's definitely part of the blob. He has adopted the ideology of the Education of Scotland, General Teaching Council of Scotland, the unions, most head teachers, probably most teachers as well, I'm sad to say. So he's right on message with the ethos of Scottish schools. So let's have a look what he's got to say here. So we went on TV to discuss school violence. Here's the only way to solve it. Right, school violence. Right, we all know about that problem, don't we? Absolute chaos in a lot of schools and outright violence, assaults, routinely, pupil against pupil, pupils against teachers, an absolute epidemic. All right, what does Mr. McKenney think we need to do about it? Here we go. Schools have been under enormous pressure for years. Teacher numbers declined significantly in the years after the SNP took office in 2007, just as the profession was struggling to introduce a new and much more complicated curricular structure. Year after year of public sector cuts, driven by the scam of austerity economics, ripped away layers of resources and support. The number of pupils with additional support needs has increased more dramatically than anyone could have anticipated. Teachers don't have the time to properly support their pupils. There was a global pandemic. Oh, let's just read the last bit as well while we're at it. To make matters worse, life has become increasingly difficult for families over the past 15 years or so. And as anyone who has worked in education will tell you, children bring their home life into school with them. How could they not? Right, what do you make of that then? So the kids are punching the teachers and punching each other. Absolutely appalling behavior. And what's the reason? Not even a consideration of these pupils are at fault. They're doing something wrong. They need to be punished. They need to be taught a lesson. There needs to be punishment to deter this sort of behavior in schools. Not a mention. It's all from this sort of left-wing perspective. If only the objectives of the Labour government or the SNP government, if only those objectives could be fulfilled, then behavior would suddenly improve. I don't know how we'd explain the deterioration of behavior in independent schools, which has definitely happened as well, quite significantly. So it all comes down to money. There's not enough staff. There's not enough money. There's not enough support workers. There's not enough money at home. There's the pandemic, etc., etc. Anything apart from personal responsibility. Now, are some of those things that he talks about, are they possibly factors? Yes, to a degree. But if you're going to try and solve this problem, like tomorrow morning in a school, where do you start? You start with toughening up, discipline, and getting a grip on things and making the pupils behave themselves. I think we've got a bit more from him. So it now comes a bit more to the nub of the issue about behavior management approach. So it says, add to that a behavior management approach that, like the curriculum, depends on teachers having lots of spare time and ever-increasing pressures linked to endless demands for improvement. So he's talking about the restorative discipline approach, restorative methods. Okay, so if a pupil does something wrong, instead of punishing them, you have a chat and explain, help them to understand why what they did was wrong. That, Fred doesn't like being punched in the face, as if they didn't already know that. So again, it gets the discipline strategy, and he's not criticizing the very strategy that's causing the chaos, the weak and ineffectual restorative practices approach. Instead, he's saying the problem with that approach is it takes too much time. If teachers only had time to sit around on the beanbags for long enough, having these nice restorative conversations, then everything will be okay. Does he really believe that? Does he really believe that? There's actually very widespread opinion among teachers that restorative practices just don't work and they want to ditch them. That's pretty widespread now, but not in the Herald here. He goes on to say the fact that most of the violence comes from primary school children who are not old enough to have learned to regulate their emotions reinforces this interpretation. Right, so misbehavior from primary school children who are not old enough to have learned to regulate their emotions. In other words, there's nothing you can do about that. It's just the age that they can't regulate their emotions. They can't be expected to behave properly. They can't be expected to not thump each other. So you just got to live with it, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't quite make sense what it's saying, but you get the gist. You get the gist. Absolutely, John. It's a pretty straightforward equation we're dealing with here. But they will not see the obvious because they're ideologically opposed to it. All right. Where are we? Let's have a look what we've got next. Now, I'm going to make a video about this week and be a little provocative, shall we say. This is John Swinney at the Declaration of Nationhood, or a recognition of the Palestinian state, or whatever that means. And so he went out to London, and next to him is the Palestinian Authority representative, sort of diplomat here in Britain. I don't quite sure how that works because Palestine isn't really a country. Anyway, it's some sort of representative of Palestinian people. And I made a video about him before when Humza Yousaf met him. And after the October the 7th terrorist attacks, he absolutely adamantly refused to condemn them. So on a number of news interviews, they said to him, will you condemn them? Or what do you feel about them? And he would not condemn them. Now, I would say on the Israel-Gaza conflict, the spectrum of acceptable opinion is between that was a terrible terrorist attack and whatever Israel has done since, that is perfectly justified. And at the other end of the spectrum of acceptable opinion is that was a terrible thing that happened on October the 7th, appalling barbarism. But since then, Israel's exploited it and been vindictive in its response towards the Palestinian people. Okay, so that's the spectrum of acceptable opinion. This gentleman here is outside that spectrum because he will not condemn the 7th of October attacks. Now, what's the connection with the SNP? Well, obviously he's there with his mate John Swinney, but the SNP invited this man to speak at their conference and gave him a huge standing ovation, and then John Swinney gave him a massive hug. Now, let's assume, which is not unreasonable, that the SNP knows exactly the position of this man. They know his take that he will not condemn the appalling terrorist attack on October the 7th, 2023. And yet they make him their hero at the conference. Okay, so there's a lot more to my reasoning, but basically I'm going to come to the conclusion from that the SNP is anti-Semitic. Why? I mean, would they invite any other terrorist, or someone who refused to condemn any other sort of terrorism? Would they invite them on to the platform? No. But if it's terrorism against Jews, then the SNP, they're fine with that. They're fine with that. So yeah, well, keep your eye out for that video. It might be quite controversial. I'm going to say at the beginning of the video, I think, welcome to everyone watching the video, which will include our subscribers and maybe people who don't like the SNP, and maybe the SNP's legal team as well. But I've looked into it. I will be absolutely fine making that allegation. So look out for that video next week. Oh, did you see this? This is just remarkable, absolutely remarkable. So this was Gillian Mackay, put this on X. I guess she put on other social media as well. But what is she thinking? This looks like some sort of primary school IT project. So stop the yachts, transgender flag. Then there's that picture, it's supposed to be J.D. Vance with a bald head, isn't it? Palestine flag, needless to say. Abolish landlords and the crown, tax the rich, Scottish Greens. And then, what have we got on the top right there? On the top right bar of the saltire, the badge of the Scottish Football Association. I wonder how they feel about that. I wonder how the Scottish Football Association feel about being used on promotional materials, having their logo used on promotional materials for the Scottish Green Party. So what do you think I did? Obviously, I emailed them. I tried to phone them up, but you can't phone them up. So I emailed them and I said, are you happy with the Green Party using your logo on their promotional materials? People will have been given the impression that you're supportive of the Scottish Green Party. Maybe you ought to issue a statement clarifying that you do not wish the Scottish Green Party to use your logo on their promotional materials, and that you do not endorse them in any way, shape, or form. So I've written to the Scottish Football Association along those lines. I've alerted a journalist as well. They might want to phone up the Scottish Football Association just to see what's going on. So, yeah, but just the standard of it. I mean, why would you put or is it genius? Do they know if you put something out that looks like 8-year-olds done it, that people laugh at it and think that's so awful, I'm going to retweet it to lots of other people? Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, that's the Scottish Greens. Stop the boat. Well, stop the yacht. No, the boats are fine. The inflatable boats full of illegal immigrants, that's fine. That's anyone who's has a yacht, I think, is their issue. So slightly different. Right there, David. Recognizing Gaza's statehood has made peace even more difficult in the Middle East. I think that might well be true. I know Israel's been in action again there. I do worry about the ceasefire, whether or not it was premature. Obviously, we want peace, but sometimes there's a point at which a stable peace can be achieved, and sometimes there's not. And in Hamas, we've got people so stuffed full of hatred that really it's hard to see how they're ever going to be enter into any sort of harmonious relationship with their neighbor. So I hope things work out with the current fragile peace, but I'm concerned it's not going to go brilliantly. Right. So this is fascinating. This is fascinating. This is research published, I think it was May 2025, about people's views in the whole of Britain on the pro-life issue. So let's look at the top line. So basically we've got here. So people are asked, take your pick. Abortion, legal in all cases, legal in most cases, don't know. Illegal in most cases, illegal in all cases. Now, what would I pick? Do I think abortion is illegal? It should be illegal in all cases. Well, what if the mother's life is in danger? But then a lot of medics say, actually, there is never a case to perform an abortion when the mother's life is in danger. It just doesn't happen. You don't need to kill the baby. You might need to deliver the baby prematurely that will sadly result in death, but you don't need to take steps to deliberately kill the baby. But how many people in the UK can go through that chain of reasoning? I mean, virtually none. So I would say here, illegal in all cases and illegal in most cases. That's basically a pro-life position. And I think the two blue bars, legal in all cases, legal in most cases. Again, what does all cases mean? Right up to birth? So that'd be more liberal than the current law. So basically the blue bars are pro-choice. Blue bars are pro-choice. The I don't know, what calls that, like lime green, and the olive green ones are the pro-life ones. So overall, pro-life is coming out at about 17% across the UK, which I would say is fairly encouraging. And then there's a good number of don't knows as well. But basically the pro-choice 71%. Watching the mainstream media, here in the political parties, you'd think the pro-choice was like 99%, wouldn't you? But 71%. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, broken down by gender and age. So we're first of all looking at young men, younger men, 16 to 34. So not really young, 16 to 34. So what percentage of those are basically pro-choice? 46%, less than half. And pro-life, we're on 36%. 36%. What is going on here, and how has this happened? How is this happening? I think the explanation is quite tricky. I mean, fire in any comments. You think why this has happened? Is it online influence? Is it people hearing pro-life voices online, on YouTube or whatever? That's having an influence? I really do not know. But you hear at the schools, we're very concerned about the values of a lot of young men in schools now, very concerned. They're being radicalized online. Well, maybe this is part of what they mean. Young men are becoming more and more pro-life. And a lot of teachers would say, oh, something's going wrong here. We need to have a special seminar to discuss how to address this problem. Well, that's the sort of thing that will be happening. So that is extremely good news. Looking at the others, again, the men 35 to 54 are more pro-life the men in the oldest bracket, 55 to 75. They didn't seem to include over 75s. Anyway, so the older men are the most pro-choice, the least pro-life. Is that interesting? I reckon you could make quite a bit of money betting people that that will be the opposite way around. But it's not. It's not. I think the days when you think, well, pretty old people, they'll have really traditional values, won't they? Those days are coming to an end. The people who've got traditional conservative values, basically just because of the era they were brought up, these people are now getting very old. I mean, they're well into their 80s and 90s. That's the generation that just were brought up with traditional values and will tend to still have them. And so people, even our people in their 70s, will tend to have quite liberal values because that's what they grew up with. Right, let's look at the bottom bit now. So women. So again, look at the youngest women. The youngest women, 16 to 34, are the most pro-life. How is this happening? I mean, I think that's supernatural, because the pro-choice campaigning is more prominent and aggressive and ubiquitous than ever, and yet young women are more pro-life. Fascinating. Right, let's have a look at the next slide here. So this is about the time limit. So the 24-week time limit, which is currently applies in the UK, you can have an abortion after them. For example, if he or she is disabled or some sort of health problem or health risk to the mother. But in normal cases, the limit is 24 weeks. So the question is the 24-week limit too low? So should it be 28 weeks or 30 weeks or whatever? Or is it too high? Is it too late? In other words, you would like it reducing. So how many people think it's too early? Well, very, very few. Very few. And yet the House of Parliament at Westminster have recently voted to basically decriminalize abortion, so to take away the time limit completely when the woman performs the abortion herself by taking pills. So the House of Commons is totally out of sync with public opinion on that issue. Now, the ones who think it's about right, yeah, that's about half, just under half of people in the middle. Now, who thinks it's too late? Well, quite a proportion, actually, between a fifth and a third of people. Now, what's a little bit odd here, if you look at the young men here, only 19% think the time limit is too late, which is a bit strange since 36% of them think most or all abortions should be legal. So I'm not quite sure how that makes sense. But the overall picture there leans on the issue of the time limit. It leans in the pro-life direction. Now, I know reducing time limits is far from the end goal, to say the least, but it's interesting that that's the way people are leaning on that. So encouraging, I would say. Why do you think young men are pro-life? Social media and Christian revival. Yes, yep, I think social media, and I think there is some things happening in terms of in a spiritual way with young men in particular. A lot of churches reporting young men are turning up and becoming Christians and basically wanting to live a better life, wanting to escape from various problems they might have had. I mean, at my church last Sunday, there was a young man who had become a Christian, and he said that he'd been a very heavy drinker, but he'd read in the Bible something about being sober, a verse about being sober. So he's really challenged. So he completely dropped the sort of crazy drinking, become a Christian on his way to a new and better life. So great. Yeah. Those sort of stories are great, and there's more and more of them coming. Right, quick look at this story. I've talked about this sort of thing a few times recently, but there's yet another case. King Charles heckled over Prince Andrew and Epstein. In other words, King Charles was out meeting some people, and one person started shouting at him about Prince Andrew and Epstein. Now, my issue with this is this shouldn't be a news story. It shouldn't be possible for one person to go along and shout and to have a headline on the front page of the BBC News website. It shouldn't be possible to do that. Okay, maybe if you've broken into somewhere and got into the TV studio or something, okay, yeah, maybe that's a news story. But just to shout at someone in the street, that's not a news story. The same as, some idiot puts bacon on the mosque doors, that's not a news story. If some idiot in a football crowd shouts something racist in a football match. That's not a news story, because we shouldn't hand so much power to people to just do something outrageous, to act outside the bounds of propriety in a certain situation, and then instantly you've dominated the news agenda. You shouldn't be able to do that. So BBC, that's not a news story. That is not news. I just thought about. I thought maybe from time to time on the live stream I'd just throw in one of my photographs I've been taking. To that the other day at Craig Lockhart Pond. Right. If anyone wants to make any encouraging statements about my photography, you could fire those in. Okay. Right. What do you make of that? Death to Airbnb. Now you might think that's a little harsh. So this was stuck on a litter bin in Edinburgh. The turkey behind it, that's just on another poster. This sticker's been put over another poster. So this obviously is someone who's frustrated with the number of Airbnb properties. Maybe it's noisy. Maybe there's bad behavior in the stair or whatever. So some people are fed up with Airbnb. And there has been regulation. The licenses have been refused in Edinburgh now. So the issue is in hand with the Scottish government. But death to Airbnb. I mean, really? I mean, if you went back, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years, would you find anyone putting a sticker up saying death to Airbnb? I mean, maybe you get someone putting something up saying, we're protesting the number, we're fed up with the amount of Airbnbs or whatever during our campaign. But really, would you find anyone saying death to Airbnb? I'm not sure you would. And I think this use of extreme language, extreme terminology is quite concerning. It's becoming more and more normal to say things like that. And okay, I don't think anyone's going to murder any Airbnb landlord, but well, who knows? There are some crazy people around. So yeah, it's quite shocking to see that, though there are people of that mind that will resort to that sort of language over such a sort of mundane issue. So this is something else I might make a little video on before too long. I went to the National Portrait Gallery in Edinburgh on Queen Street the other day. Had a look around. It's very good. And to be honest, I've seen worse in terms of politicization in museums. I've seen a lot worse. It's fairly neutral, but in the main foyer, there's quite a grand entrance section there. They've got a statue of Reverend Thomas Chalmers. Now, Thomas Chalmers was, you could describe him as the leader or founder or certainly the key figure at the inception of the Free Church of Scotland back in 1843, when they decided to leave the Church of Scotland because they weren't happy with other people choosing their ministers for them. That was basically the main issue about it. So what became the Free Church of Scotland, they left the Church of Scotland. Often the ministers who left, they left their manse, so they didn't have a home, so they became homeless. They left their church buildings and struck out alone as a matter of principle, which certainly was very, very principled. And the Free Church of Scotland, and Thomas Chalmers in particular, was involved in a vast amount of work that anyone, regardless of what you think about the disruption, the split in the Church of Scotland, regardless of what you think about Presbyterianism or whatever, regardless of that, he did a lot of things, and the Free Church of Scotland in those days did a lot of things that were very worthy in terms of education, social improvement, care for the poor, massively active, incredibly positive in Scotland. So what do they put on their label for Thomas Chalmers in this gallery? So it says, 1843, Chalmers led a breakaway group from the Church of Scotland. The group went to form the Free Church of Scotland, a religiously conservative denomination that remains active in Scotland today. So far, so good. £3,000 was raised in the United States in support of the new group. Some donations came from people who participated in and profited from enslavement of people of African descent, etc. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So the Free Church of Scotland, they've struck out on their own. The ministers are homeless. They've got no church buildings. And a group of people in America had a collection, clubbed together, they raised funds and sent them to the Free Church of Scotland to support them. And the only thing they want to say about Thomas Chalmers basically is that they didn't properly check that where these donations have come from and whether or not the donors held slaves. I mean, it's a pretty tenuous connection, isn't it? So people in America had the collection, got the money together, and they said, right, here it is, this is what we've got. Now, in that situation, what's the Free Church of Scotland really supposed to say? Oh, hang on a minute. We want to look in. We want to know where all your donations came from. I mean, that's really too much to ask, isn't it? It's too much to ask. So they take someone who was such a massively positive influence. I mean, it really should be a hero figure in Scottish history for his work on education and social improvement, a hero figure. And they just want to say, some links to slavery. He had no links to slavery. Totally out of order what they've done that. But that's Scottish museums and galleries for you. All right. Now, John, any comment on the split within the Church of England over the female Archbishop of Canterbury? The split's more, I think, about her views on same-sex marriage. And I guess the only comment I'd make again is that it has split. It has split. Some people seem to be saying it's on the verge of splitting. GAFCOM, which claim that they actually contain 85% of the Anglican Communion's membership, 85% of the members, they have said they're not engaging in any of the fora through which the Anglican Communion maintains fellowship with each other. So they're not going to go to the Lambeth Conference. They don't accept the Archbishop of Canterbury. They're not going to go to all these other things. So basically, it is a total split. And it should be bigger news. So it has happened. Is it a positive thing that has happened? Well, my personal view would be it probably is a positive thing. I guess what maybe needs to happen is for churches in Scotland, for example, in the Episcopal Church in Scotland, should join GAFCOM and leave the Anglican Communion. But I'm getting off my territory here. Now, this is a very good question. Is the Chalmers Clinic in Edinburgh named after him? I wondered the same, because if it was, I would have said he would be turning in his grave to have like an abortion gender treatment, so-called clinic named after him. But it is not named after him. And I did some research and found out who it was named after, and I can't remember. But Liam will tell us any second. Liam, are you still watching? The Chalmers Clinic in Edinburgh, who was it named after? I can't remember, but it's not named after Thomas Chalmers. Thomas Chalmers' brother was Charles Chalmers, and he was the founder of Merkston Castle School, where I used to work. And he was also a theologian and a mathematician as well. Right, on we go. Let's go to our little video. You might have seen this on social media, but my wife organises the 40 Days for Life vigil in Edinburgh, which used to be outside the Chalmers Clinic, but it's now been moved along the road because of the buffer zone. So they still have a lot of interaction with people, a lot positive, a lot of people just interested. I mean, I think it was last week, I went along to one of the slots, and I was the person on duty to speak to people who came up to speak to us, and I had two conversations with people, and they were both just so open to, they weren't particularly committed either way. They weren't like pro-lifers, but they weren't too keen on abortion either. Both conversations just went brilliantly. I mean, they really seemed very open to the pro-life message. But then this happened the other day. So just watch this gentleman.
Oh, really? I won't be no man. Think you're fucking pissed the fuck. Go and stand the fucking yard for the fucking Christian, alright? Go on. I'm 10 years old. Alright, fine. You want me to knock your teeth in the fucking lift up?
Just get the police.
Get the fucking police. Don't go fucking scared of the police. Now look like I'm scared of the fucking police, mate. I am not. I have been to prison.
Right. That's just my
Get your fucking side.
Don't answer
Get
back.
the fuck your bags. You follow me and I'll knock your fucking teeth in. You can wonder.
Right, so that gentleman's come and spoken to the group twice now. The first time he threatened to punch a lady, and that time he pushed the man there, so pushed him on the chest, snatched the signs, threatening all sorts. On another occasion, he was like doing a 3-point turn in his car, and made it look like he was coming at the group in his car quite fast. That was the impression gained. In any case, it has been reported to the police. Yeah, it has been reported to the police. I think the police will act on it. There will be some sort of action. But it's quite interesting. Well, I suppose the first question is, I mean, why is someone like that so angry? I mean, sometimes if it's a woman, you tend to think they've had an abortion, they're feeling really guilty, we've touched a nerve, and this is the way it's coming out. For that man, though, to be behaving like that, I mean, it's quite, I mean, part of it just seems like sheer anti-religious sentiment in him, but very fierce. I mean, 10 out of 10 for the people at the vigil for being so calm with him and then just going back to the same place day after day, regardless. They haven't been scared off by him. But you mentioned the police. I mean, the police will do something. I don't want to criticize the police. My experience with the police generally is that they're great. I mean, they're really good, particularly the actual policemen and women you meet on the ground tend to be very good. So yeah, this is with the police, and things will take their course. But the contrast I would like to point out in when Rose Doherty went along with her placard outside the hospital in Glasgow, the police were there in no time. I mean, 20 minutes, they'd be swooping in. I mean, one time it ended up with 8 police officers on the scene because of Rose Doherty holding her one placard. 8 police officers. And the time she was arrested, say they were there in no time. Absolute top priority. Whereas this, I'm not complaining it's slow. I'm just pointing out the contrast. That it seems like holding a placard in the buffer zone, they virtually parachute someone in. They've virtually got the helicopter there to get someone there absolutely as soon as possible. But for someone threatening assault, I mean, it is assault, actually, and threatening more serious assault, well, that's not quite so high up in the priorities. Another example of politicized policing. If they don't go along to arrest Rose Doherty, that will be difficult for them politically. They'll get attacked by Gillian Mackay. They'll be criticized in the media. They'll be criticized by the government. The government will be saying, come on, we've passed this, so you need to get and do this. Whereas if it's just someone, pushing someone and whacking things out of their hands, threatening to punch them, I mean, that's just routine police stuff, isn't it? We're not too bothered about that, are they? Right, let's have a look at this. People are literally dying because they can't get shelter because people with multiple properties making a quick buck, and you're worried about someone using a term like death to Airbnb. Yes, I am worried about people using a term like death to Airbnb because it's inflammatory, irresponsible, and it shows someone who hasn't got a proper sense of morality and respect in conducting any sort of debate. Right? People are dying because they can't get shelter because of people with multiple properties. I find that difficult to believe. I think that might be a tad hysterical. There are housing issues, and the family party policy is to put pressure on buy-to-let landlords so there are more houses available for people who want to buy them. But there are houses being built all over the place. There are homeless shelters. If you've got nowhere to live and you go to the council, I think you get somewhere pretty quickly. So I don't accept that Airbnb is resulting in people dying. So I don't believe that. And right, let's carry on. Right, this is a little snippet from an article by Miriam Cates. Miriam Cates was a Conservative MP. She now works for GB News. Basically, she's an evangelical Christian, and she's totally on board with everything that we stand for, as far as I can tell. But she won't come out and say straightforwardly that she's pro-life. So when she's asked for that, would you like to see abortion stopped? She'll say things like, "Oh, we need to deal with the policies to help mothers first," or something. So she's reluctant to actually say it, but obviously she is really underneath. But anyway, this is what she said at the end of an article. talking about the abortion decriminalization. She was hoping it can still be stopped. So these amendments likely to be debated early next year in the House of Lords, meaning the media has some time to perform the role for which it exists and raise awareness about them. It's our duty to do so. No civilized country should allow abortion up to birth. Now, quite true. But the thing I really want to add there is we already do. For disabled children, the abortion up to birth in case of disability is already here. So I think that point really needs ramming home. I always think with the abortion issue is if you approach any of the marginal issues like decriminalization, like time limits, pills by post, okay, they're really important, they're really valid issues, but ultimately everything needs to come back to every life is precious. And if that point it doesn't get through, then all the others are not going to get through either. So no civilized country should allow abortion up to birth. Well, by Miriam Case must think we're already not a civilized country. And that is quite right. Misogynistic thugs like him are shielded from justice by the likes of Gillian Mackay. Well, we'll see. I'd be surprised if there's any. Well, who knows? Who knows? Maybe when this case does go to decision-making bodies, maybe there will be a slight finger on one side of the scales saying, "Oh, well, it was towards those, those nasty people at the vigils, wasn't it?" So, yeah, I mean, they weren't quite breaking the law, but they were 1 meter away from breaking the law. So that must be pretty bad. So maybe it's not that serious. So yeah, interesting. We shall see. We shall see. I was over in Glasgow on Thursday, and in St Enoch Square, there were a big crowd of fans for the team. It was an Austrian team that were there playing Celtic, and so it was a big crowd. They were singing, being quite boisterous, and left a total mess behind them like that. And when I saw the mess, there tends to be a thing, crowds in general, maybe football crowds in particular, that a sort of mentality takes over that the normal rules don't apply. So the normal thing, like you put your rubbish in a bin, well, no, there's 300 of us, so you don't need to do that. Or this is a road and cars have got right of way. No, there's 300 of us, we can walk across the road and whatever. And I think that sort of mob mentality, I mean, it's just part of human nature, but it's disappointing. Let's put it that way. I mean, on the other hand, I mean, would there have been enough room in the bins to put all that stuff in? I really don't know. But you would hope that everyone there, when they finish their 3 cans of Tennent's, then what they're going to do with it, I mean, you would hope that they would carry it until they find a bin to put it in. That's what you or I would do, isn't it? But it seems to be when you get people in a crowd, it's as though like the normal responsibility, the normal rules don't apply anymore. I mean, evidence, they seem quite good natured. There didn't seem to be any trouble. The police shepherded them off, I assume, towards the game, and I wasn't aware of any further problems. But yeah, it's disappointing, isn't it? Oh, just going back to the vigil in Edinburgh. That's just a panel blocking up an entry behind where the people stand for the vigil. And through the time, people have come along and put like pro-abortion posters up, and then we had this pro-abortion graffiti. And then someone's coming along with a big red marker or something or other, and they've tried to write pro-life over it, to cross it out and write pro-life instead. Now, remember last year I said, I'm pretty sure someone had squirted red liquid on the door of the abortion clinic to symbolize blood. It's still there, actually. They haven't got right. They don't seem to have got what it means. So I'm pretty sure that happened. It intrigues me, and it intrigues me because I really don't know who would do that. I don't know anyone pro-life that would be going around doing that sort of thing. But anyway, there is someone. I'm not saying I approve, but there is someone. Right, our conference. We must be getting. Here we are. Give it a quick mention. So where are we? A week and a bit's time now, 8th of November in Glasgow. Do come and join us. It's only £15. That includes lunch. Join us for a meal later on if you'd like to. That's optional. Pay a bit extra for that. Be great to see you. I think we've got maybe the best lineup ever of speakers. It's going to be really interesting. Some very varied topics. It's going to be very good indeed. It'd be great to see you along. We're going to vote on some policies as well, some new policies that have been proposed. So it'd be great to see you joining us there. And while I'm at it with events, Thursday night in Dundee, do join us. Well, it's a Spuck event, but we're contributing the light display, taking our lights to City Square Dundee, 6 till 8 on Thursday this week. Then we'll go to a pub somewhere afterwards for a while. And I'll just publicise this on behalf of Spuck as well, Society for the Protection of Unborn Children. They've got a pro-life procession, 6:30 from John Street in Glasgow. This is a big event. Hundreds of people go to it. So I would strongly recommend that. And then there's Rosary and Mass in the Cathedral, which you may or may not want to go to or participate in. But the procession, I think anyone would find that a very positive experience to go and join in. Right, just going back to this. This is found this slightly amusing. I've had this book for ages. I took it off the shelf to show someone a couple of days ago. So it's David Hume's famous essay on treatise on suicide. And then it's unfortunate that the branding says Penguin Books and the theme of the series is great ideas. I think so. Yeah, I didn't notice that before, but yeah, not quite appropriate to have a book on suicide in the Great Ideas series. Right, let's have a look here. Hugh, my boy will be 23 tomorrow. Not biologically mine to you, but the thought of taking life didn't cross my mind. Love him as much as my other boys. He's a blessing. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's such a core belief, isn't it? The equal value of all human life. It's so core, and it's built into us. It's built into our intuitions. People have to work really hard to overcome these intuitions and get people to go against this, go against their conscience, basically, in this regard. So, right, talked about that. Right, I'm not quite sure I'm going to have time to talk about that one. I'll give this one a mention. There's been a drip of stories in the mainstream media about surrogacy bad news stories. I mean, this is the latest. Reveal the British surrogacy company that pays exploited women in Mexico just £12,000 for every baby. I mean, in a family party policy, as I'm sure you know, it's just to ban surrogacy completely. And that's not some wild extreme policy. That's the policy of many European countries. Britain is a bit of an outlier. In Britain, commercial surrogacy is not allowed, but so you just go abroad for that. But it is just wrong. It's basically mum and dad should bring up their own children, ideally, and using a surrogate, even if it's using the gametes of the mother and father, using a surrogate it's just not right. It's bringing someone else into that process, and it opens up a whole range of problems, and it affects emotional attachments and doesn't have great outcomes for children overall either. So it's quite good that this is getting attention, though. It's coming up in the news more and more. So long may it continue. Talking about what comes up in the news, I can't remember which paper this was in. It was maybe the Daily Record. I'm not sure. So I sleep with married men all the time. People call me a home wrecker, but I'm not doing anything wrong. You still get stories like this quite routinely in newspapers. And wouldn't it be amazing if we got to the stage where any newspaper editor would think, I'm not publishing that. If they read that and thought that would be like publishing, I abuse children. I go around torturing cats or something. So any newspaper editor of any remotely respectable publication would look at that and think, no, we're not publishing that, not on your life. I mean, let's hope that we reach a stage before too long when a story like this would just be unthinkable. I mean, it'd be in some dark corner of the internet. But no, you wouldn't have someone being given column inches in a newspaper to promote this sort of thing. But at the moment, we do. So we're going to talk about the family party promoting a culture of marriage. I mean, let's say I was a member of the Scottish Parliament. I would find some way of bringing that up. I would write to the newspaper and ask them about that, ask them to justify that. I would speak about it, maybe take the opportunity to raise it in the chamber, maybe put forward a motion in the Scottish Parliament, maybe specifically condemning this story, and invite other MSPs to sign it. That's the way we could use that influence to change culture. Yeah, this one, obviously the men involved as well, equally culpable. There's a nice little snippet from Raymond, a supporter in Northern Ireland, one of our supporters in Northern Ireland. So ITV News story, Hull man convicted of child destruction after killing pregnant teenager's unborn child. Now, child destruction is a crime, I think it's just in England and Wales. Basically, if you attack a woman and it results in her unborn child dying, then that can be the crime of child destruction. Quite a serious crime. And Raymond's making the point, how can there be such a crime when if the woman were to kill her own child at any stage, then that's now okay in England and Wales. And it's coming in Scotland. It's not going to happen before the election. It won't be talked about at all during the election campaign. But as soon as, doesn't matter, SNP or Labour, either of them will do it. They will get on with it, and it will happen in Scotland. So, a couple of minutes left. I've just about got time to touch on this one. Pope Leo condemns usury, a grave sin that speaks to the corruption of the human heart. This is an issue I've thought about a little bit. Not so much recently, but a few years ago, thought a bit about it. So basically charging interest. I mean, Muslims basically say it's wrong to charge interest. So you get the Islamic finance system. Now, to be honest, the Islamic finance system, often they sort of do charge interest, but they just find a way of putting a different veneer on it and calling it something else. But underneath it's actually pretty similar. Not in all cases, but I think often that's the case. But in some points in Christian history, basically the church taught, or Christians believed, that you were not allowed to charge interest. You just shouldn't do that. And it has quite interesting consequences. And in some ways, it makes for a more responsible and healthy financial system. So, for example, if you're going to take a mortgage, at the moment, the mortgage lender says, right, here's the money. This is what you've got to pay back. And if you can't afford to pay it, then we'll take your house. Right. If you're not allowed to charge interest, then what are you allowed to charge? You could maybe say, okay, what was the mortgage company, the lending company, what they gain becomes linked to the value of the house. So as the value of the house goes up, the lender gets a portion of it. Now, what does that do? That makes the lenders be very careful. They're not going to lend you the money if they don't think this asset is going to increase in value. So might that be a good thing in some ways? In some ways, maybe it would. But a better example is you think about, say, investing in a company. So at the moment, if I wanted to start a company making, I don't know, who knows what. So I need investors. So if I went to the bank and got a loan, they would give me a loan and I would have to pay interest on the loan. So as far as the bank's concerned, whether my business succeeds or not, okay, they probably would like it to succeed, but they're not actually that bothered. They're going to get their money in any case, and the loan is secured on something, so they don't actually care that much. But if instead of charging interest, they have to do it like selling, buying shares. So the income the bank got, instead of it just being a fixed rate interest, it would be dependent on how successful the company was. So what would the bank do if you go along for a loan? They would really want to check very carefully that they think this business is going to be a runner. And so would that create a more healthy system? Well, maybe it would. The Hamish, isn't usually more compound interest than simple interest. I don't think there's a strict definition of it. Some people just take it as meaning excessive interest. So I don't think interest should be abolished, but I think there are ways that it is morally questionable. And there's a case to look at other systems rather than just charging interest in order to share the risk and responsibility between the lender and the borrower. Right. Okay, Jack, could you define usury? Is there a fixed definition? When I've looked into it, there hasn't really been a fixed definition. Some people define it, I think at some points, if we go back to the Middle Ages, it was defined as interest. But now I think it's more often defined as excessive interest. I think it's partly from the Old Testament, and that's part of the reason why Jews became wealthy, is because Christians didn't think you were allowed to charge interest, and so the banking system was a bit of an open goal for Jews because they we can charge interest, and that's part of the reason why they became very prominent there. He did send out the money lenders, but I'm not sure on what basis that was. If there's no interest, then savings becomes less favorable. I think you can give interest. It's charging interest that I think is the issue. Now that gets common. I mean, you could say when you put your money in the bank, in a sense, are you charging them for the privilege of having your money? So I think paying interest is okay. It's charging it that's more potentially problematic. I think excessive interest is clearly a moral issue. That's a form of exploiting someone's difficult situation. So if you get someone who absolutely needs to borrow money for something that's vital because of some misfortune that's befallen them, then to exploit that to charge excessive interest, especially if it results in the person never being able to actually pay off the debt, then that is obviously wrong. It's 6:30, the Spuck Vigil. Let's just go back and check. I think it was 6:30. Yeah, 6:30. Starts at 6:30, and it starts at 6 in Dundee. If anyone could be there early in Dundee and give a hand laying the lights out, that would be much appreciated. But time has gone. Time has gone. Right. Thank you very much for your comments. Do get your conference tickets. In fact, why don't I just put the link in to the comments right now? It won't appear on X, but it'll appear on the others. So you can get your tickets. Get your tickets there. It'd be great to see you, and hopefully see a couple of you in Dundee as well. A few of you in Dundee on Thursday night, and see you next week. Right. Good night.